Recess number 2. Back on the jungle gym.
Mr. Wright's sure acting funny. I mean, he's famous for going out on a limb, but that last assertion was just plain crazy.
It's either a bluff or a Hail Mary. Either way, it doesn't make much sense.
Maybe there's something we're missing here. Although, he seemed perfectly normal when we spoke earlier. Apollo, I have a bad feeling about this. I'm gonna go check up on him.
What's going on with you, Mr. Wright?
Hey, Private Justice!
Oh, Sarge.
I forgot to mention something. On the night of Papa's murder, a strange thing happened.
Oh? But why are you only telling me about it now?
Well, I didn't say anything because I thought Papa's death was an accident. But now that we know otherwise, I figured it might be important.
There's still more to this case.
When I left my room and lost consciousness, I passed out right here.
That's right above the coffee bar.
But when I came to, someone was pushing my wheelchair.
What?
I was so scared, I beat a hasty retreat as fast as my wheels could take me.
Do you know who it was?
No, it was pitch black. Plus, I fled to my room so fast I didn't even have a chance to turn on the lights.
Maybe it was your father.
No, he would have said something to me. Besides, I'd have known if it was him.
So then, it could have been your father's real killer?
My thoughts exactly.
But you didn't report this to the police.
It didn't even occur to me.
It's okay. You're obviously still upset, so don't beat yourself up over it. Apollo, this could be really important information. I think the act of pushing Sarge's wheelchair could be part of some bigger scheme. It's hard to see why else the killer would have done such a thing. Guess I should take her statement down as evidence. Okay. Oh, welcome back, Athena. What's with the long face? How'd it go with Mr. Wright?
What should I...
Athena?
Oops, sorry. Zoned out there for a sec. The race is almost over, so let's go.
What was that all about? What? Alright, so whatever Paul has on Phoenix is big enough that it's also kind of bugged Athena. Huh.
Alright, court is once again back in session. Now, Mr. Wright, about that last objection you raised.
We, the plaintiffs, still believe that the defense has yet to sufficiently prove its case. They claim that, according to legend, the Founder's Orb would bestow spiritual power. Yet, the relic in question has failed to do so. Therefore, it has failed its own test.
I see.
You sticking with that ridiculous argument? Furthermore, even if it is the Founder's Orb, it can't be awarded to the Defiant Dragons. After all, they were the ones who killed Dr. Buff.
Objection!
What are you talking about? That was already proven to be false. There are no grounds for asserting that the Defiant Dragons murdered the Doctor. Oh, but I'm afraid there are, Mr. Justice. Your Honor, I would like to present new testimony to this court. Testimony that will show that Datsa Rebel
did in fact kill Dr. Buff. What?
Very well. You may call your witness.
I guess Mr. Wright found a new angle. Another new angle. What new testimony could there be this late in the game? Fellow citizens, it is I, politician, the once and future representative of the people. Geez, not him again. My client divulged new information to me during the recess. He remembered something he saw, you see. Something crucial to this case. How very convenient. Vexer Goofy, welcome in. Testimony, let's go. It was around 11 at night. I was out on a mobile meet and greet around the village. That's when I saw Dr. Buff being murdered from outside his study window. Mr. Revel snuck up from behind and struck him on the head. His weapon of choice, a suitcase. No blood was on the suitcase, and I think Luminol would reveal any. A big, strong man like him could easily swing a heavy suitcase into someone's head. You saw the murder as it happened? And you're just telling us now because... I saved the best for last. It's a tactic known to all the political greats. The murder weapon was a complete mystery, but my client's eyewitness account has finally brought it into the light.
According to the autopsy report, Dr. Buff was struck in the head by the corner of some object. I suppose it could very well be the corner of a
Very rounded corner of a suitcase?
fine.
Objection!
But eyewitness testimony isn't the same as hard evidence. Oh, I wouldn't worry about that if I were you. What's that supposed to mean? What, did you get Emma to get it? We have physical evidence too. A luminol test revealed. The doctor's blood on Mr. Orebel's suitcase. Really? But how does that prove Mr. Orebel used it as a weapon?
Objection!
You should know the answer to that, Mr. Justice. Since you know as well as I that the suitcase is covered in his fingerprints. But it's his suitcase. I forgot we dusted it right in front of Emma. Ugh. Okay, that looks bad. That's not conclusive. The turnabout terror strikes again.
This is quite convincing testimony and evidence. Nevertheless, you may proceed with your cross-examination, Mr. Justice.
Okay. That's his crime. It was 11 at night, and I was out on a mobile meet and greet around the village.
Hold it!
You were on a so-called mobile meet and greet at 11 at night? That's right. It's the perfect time because everyone is at home. You should have seen how the village's eyes teared up when they heard what I had to say, and that I was in fact there at all. With tears of frustration, no doubt. You weren't riding around in your palanquin? That's right. Some village idiot reported me to the police. I've been banned from using it after dark. No wonder what with all the noise he makes. So what exactly did you see then? That's when I saw Dr. Buff being murdered from outside his study window.
Hold it!
Sounds like you witnessed something rather shocking. Indeed, I didn't even believe it at first. I mean a vicious murder in Coraine. There haven't been many murders there, I take it. If I'm elected, I promise you that such a terrible tragedy will never happen again. A vote for me is a vote to banish murder forever from our beloved Karain village. That's right, I propose to outlaw murder. Yeah, good luck with that.
Mr. Atishon-Wimperson, please tell the court what you saw at the scene of the crime.
Mr. Rebel snuck up behind and struck him on the head.
Hold it!
He snuck up from behind? So you're saying the doctor never even realized Mr. Rebel was there? That's right, he was utterly absorbed in a book. I see. What did you see Mr. Rebel do next? He climbed up the bookshelf ladder and dumped a bunch of books down on the body. I believe he was trying to make it look like an accident. But that idiot didn't realize I could see everything from outside the window. One of those statements doesn't feel right. Your Honor, I believe the witness made an important statement just now about how, that's an idiot. The crime was clearly visible. I think about the book. I think reading a book is a very specific detail. Let's put that in. The doctor was reading a book at the time of the murder. That's vital testimony.
Very well. The witness will please add that statement to his testimony.
So, I'm guessing this is one of those things where we have to switch out, find the correct testimony, and then press it. The doctor was standing in front of the bookshelves, absorbed in a book.
Hold it!
What book? Tell me about the book. You watched a murderer commit his crime and did nothing to stop it? It doesn't sound like a good way to score points with the voting public. Oh, I'm a politician, not a superhero. I'm under no obligation to risk life or limb. He sure is quick to deny his obligations when there's nothing in it for him. I'm getting tired of listening to his endless campaigning and flimsy rationalizations. Much testimony, Mr. Atishon-Wimperson. You said Mr. Rebel struck the doctor from behind while he was absorbed in a book. Yes, that's exactly what happened. His weapon of choice, a suitcase.
Hold it!
Are you sure? Positive. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. Yet despite your certainty, you kept quiet about it until now. No, I was waiting. I knew there would be a perfect chance to talk about it later. Information must always be disclosed in a strategic manner. That is one of the lessons of Kingcraft, as taught by the Atishon clan. Is there a lesson by chance in the Atishon Kingcraft guidebook on being honest? Anyway, I saw Mr. Rebel commit that heinous crime. A big, strong man like him could easily swing a heavy suitcase into someone's head.
Hold it!
I would have to agree, that suitcase is really heavy. Wait a second. How did you know it was so heavy? For all you knew, it could have been empty. My client witnessed the crime in progress. So naturally, he saw Mr. Rebel straining to lift what was obviously a heavy suitcase. Phoenix! I can't say I'm a fan of you trying to discredit my client by tripping him up, Mr. Justice. I'm just doing what you always do, Mr. Right. Dr. Buff was struck from behind while he was absorbed in a book? He must have been really into it. It doesn't add up. What doesn't? That Paul Atishon is lying. I'm sure of it. So, Chad has already talked about it. It definitely was important. If he was reading a book, he should have his glasses on. And then we should have found his glasses on him or smashed the scene.
Objection!
That's why reading glasses are important. The doctor was standing in front of the bookshelves, absorbed in a book, you say? I'm sorry, but it seems your testimony is completely unreliable. That's quite a bold statement. Well, let's hear you back it up. I challenge you to prove that I am anything but 100% reliable. It'll be my pleasure. Lately, it seems the doctor's eyes had gotten so bad he needed reading glasses. However, his reading glasses were over on his desk. So you see, there's no way he could have been reading in front of the bookshelves. No, my thing! I'm sorry, Mr. Atishon-Wimperson, but I'm gonna have to ask you to explain this discrepancy to the voting public. You what? I'll explain it, you lowly cur. I simply made a mistake, you see. The doctor was actually sitting at his desk when Mr. Rebel hit him over the head. But the doctor would have been facing him. Surely he would have seen him and tried to run. Dr. Buff was nodding off. I could tell because his eyes were closed and he wasn't moving. Sounds more like what you would do. Then how do you explain the fact that he was struck in the back of the head? Isn't that something that should be impossible from the front of the desk? About that? He bowed his head when he nodded off. That's when he was clobbered.
So that's what you saw. Completely believable testimony. Well, Mr. Justice, that sounds like a perfectly reasonable explanation to me. Do you have a problem with the proposal that the doctor was struck while nodding off?
Do I? I don't know if I do. It was pretty late at night. He was reading. Let's look at the court record, because they're going to ask for evidence. Atishon saw Dats fleeing the scene. Oh. One of the books is stained with coffee. How is he going to be nodding off if he's been drinking coffee? Right? There is a problem. A very big problem. This witness statement doesn't hold up under the slightest bit of scrutiny.
Is that so? Then will you please show this court what evidence you have to justify this?
Gladly, Your Honor. This shows the problem with the witness's claim that he saw the doctor nodding off. I think it's the coffee.
Take that!
This shows the... Oh, no. This shows the glaring problem with the witness's statement. See, the witness is passed out from the overwhelming power of my evidence. No, Mr. Justice, your lackadaisical attempt to refute him put my client to sleep, that's all.
I feel a yawn comes on myself. Perhaps giving you this mentally will wake me up.
Okay, surely there are better ways to stay awake, Your Honor. Apollo, think about the relative positions of the witness and a doctor again. Right. That's where we'll find the contradiction. Oh, it's going to be the layout of the room.
Now then, Mr. Justice, see that you avoid these snooze-inducing answers in the future.
This shows the witness's problem. So if we look at the diagram, yes, there is a bookshelf on this side of the desk. So if he was at the desk, then you wouldn't be able to see it. Okay.
Take that!
A diagram of the study.
Mr. Atishon-Wimperson allegedly viewed the murder from here. And the doctor was allegedly nodding off here. But from his vantage point, the bookcase would have blocked the witness's line of sight.
Why, yes, I believe you're right.
But, no, my thing again!
Objection!
The fact remains, my client knew that the suitcase was the murder weapon. So he definitely has first-hand knowledge of the crime scene. I'm afraid I have to agree with you there, Mr. Wright. But then we have to ask ourselves, from what vantage point did he see the murder? What are you insinuating, Mr. Justice? From what vantage point could Mr. Atishon-Wimperson have seen the dozing doctor? Once we determine that, I believe we'll finally see the truth behind this incident. The witness saw the murder from right here. Because we have testimony from Army Buff, I actually think that he would have had to have been up here somewhere.
Take that!
Having come in on the second floor entrance. You've got to be kidding!
But that's...
It is indeed. But everything only makes sense if the witness was there in the study.
Inside the study? But that's the scene of the crime!
I know, Mr. Atishon-Wimperson, the man who claims to be a witness to the murder, was most certainly in that very room.
Apollo, are you suggesting?
Mr. Atishon-Wimperson, weren't you the one who actually swung that suitcase? Whoa. What you're proposing is ludicrous. My client is a small, thin man, whereas Mr. O'Rebel has the musculature to pull it off. He has a point. I gave up trying to lift that thing after one go. That's right. He's the only one who could have lifted such a heavy object. Now do you understand? The rebel that's a rebel is the doctor's killer.
As long as the suitcase is the murder weapon, the suspicion falls entirely on Dats. You have to poke a hole in Mr. Wright's argument somehow, Apollo.
Oh, I will. And with his own technique, no less. If Mr. Atishon-Wimperson couldn't swing the suitcase around, we'll just have to consider another way he could have used it as a murder weapon instead. I'm gonna turn this case on its head, Mr. Wright, just like you taught me. You talk big, Mr. Justice, but do you have what it takes?
Well, this should be interesting.
Mr. Atishon-Wimperson's testimony has been filled with one inaccuracy after another. First, he stated that Dr. Buff was in front of the bookshelves. Now he claims the doctor was sitting at his desk. So where was the victim really when he was killed? Also, where was his killer, and how was the murder weapon really used?
So the important thing here is the position of the victor and killer relative to each other.
Yes, Your Honor. If they were positioned in a certain way, it would be possible to use the suitcase as a weapon without lifting a finger. You can't mean... I would ask the court to recall the study's layout. It's quite distinctive, as you can see. The suitcase just fell. It went... I think it's the other way around. I think the suitcase fell on Buff. The suitcase would become a weapon anyone could use.
Very well, Mr. Justice. Where was Dr. Buff's killer at the time of the crime?
He would have been up here.
Take that!
There.
Oh, that's... This should wrap things up nice and pretty for you, Mr. Wright. I'd ask the court to recall the study's layout. But this time, instead of thinking in 2 dimensions, let's think in 3. Only then can we clearly see the killer's method at work. The killer didn't have to swing the suitcase. If he used gravity to his advantage, that is. I'm pushing the suitcase. That's right, it was the plaintiff, one Paul Atishon-Wimperson, who used the suitcase. He pushed it from the 2nd floor. Kabong. And sent it hurtling down onto Dr. Buff, who was sitting at the coffee bar. Yag, no, my thing. The psychology book had been in the coffee bar, no doubt. The doctor must have set it down there after he'd finished reading it or the like. But his blood got on it, which is why the killer thought to hide it in that mountain of books.
Objection!
That's quite an entertaining theory you have there, Mr. Justice. But there's no evidence that the murder took place at the coffee bar. I'm not so sure about that, Mr. Wright. Now it's coffee time. I'd say the evidence of the murder occurring at the coffee bar does exist because there's coffee on the book. The evidence does exist, and I'm gonna show you. You are? This right here is proof that the murder took place at the coffee bar. It's right there. This brown stain was determined to be coffee. What's more, it was still a bit damp when we saw it yesterday morning. One look at this book speaks volumes, I'm afraid, Mr. Wright. It tells us the doctor was having a cup of coffee at the coffee bar. That's when the suitcase came hurtling down, striking him on the head, causing both his blood and his coffee to spatter onto it. No! Well, Mr. Atishon-Wimperson? What motive could I possibly have to kill Dr. Buff? And there it is. That final excuse cornered killers are so fond of. Well, the doctor never returned your crystal to you, did he? Instead, he hid it in the cave ruins. Yay! Telling him that the Defiant Dragons were a dangerous bunch was a huge blunder. All it did was make him hide the orb. Your lie came back to bite you in the end. Even worse, the doctor saw the news reports, so he knew the relic was the Founder's orb. Being the conscientious researcher he was, he knew he had to return it to its rightful place. And that meant keeping it out of your hands. You were so angry that he refused to return the relic to you, that you killed him with your own hands. Isn't that right, Mr. Atishon-Wimperson? No! That is to say... Apollo! Don't! Please don't accuse my client of murder! Huh? What do you mean, don't accuse him? Why would you even say that, Mr. Wright? What I meant was, he's a promising politician with a bright future ahead of him. It's in our nation's best interest to avoid burdening him with the taint of a scandal. Say what? Oh, we gonna need a little more tape. There we go. Good as new. Right, you better do something to change the current courtroom climate, or I'll be charged with murder. And you know what will happen to her if that happens. What's he talking about? Well, I can ponder that later. For now, Mr. Wright, you can't possibly believe that Mr. Rebel is the killer. Are you really gonna send an innocent man to prison? I thought you were better than that. Well, Mr. Wright, answer me. Mr. Wright? What in the world's going on here? If you won't say anything, then... Mr. Atishon-Wimperson, the defense hereby accuse... Apollo, wait! Not you too, Athena. It's just... I wasn't sure whether I should say anything, but... during that last recess, when I went to check on Mr. Wright, I overheard something I shouldn't have. I trust Maya is unharmed. I can't really say, but just remember, if I'm arrested or fail to obtain the treasure, There will be consequences. Consequences of the worst kind, if you catch my drift. Relax. All you have to do is ensure I get my hands on that relic. I must deliver it to my benefactor at all costs. What do they want that relic for anyway? It's something to do with an old legend. My patron seeks the great power said to be granted to whoever solves its secret.
Maya? Is it Maya Fey? Yeah, the boss's legendary former assistant. Miss Fey's being held hostage. So it seems.
Why didn't you tell me as soon as you heard this, Athena? Come on!
Sorry, it just... Mr. Wright spotted me before I could slip away. And made me promise not to tell you. He said it would make things more difficult if you found out.
As if things weren't already hard enough.
So that's why Mr. Wright was acting so strange. I had no idea. This must have been excruciating for him. Think, Justice. Think! There's got to be something you can do!